You will never rise above the level of your discipline. You can have the most brilliant ideas, the boldest ambitions, the clearest goals. But without consistent self leadership, you will fall short every single time. Discipline is the bedrock of anything that lasts. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's the invisible force that separates those who talk about potential from those who actually fulfill it. Most people misunderstand discipline. They see it as a side tool, something you pull out when you're behind or struggling, when in truth, it should be the central pillar of your life. They think they need more motivation when what they actually need is more structure. They think they have to feel inspired, but what they really need is to stop negotiating with their excuses. Discipline is the bridge between intention and execution. It's the quiet force that shows up long after the excitement is gone. It's the trait behind every act of consistency, every step of character building, every ounce of self trust. Because when you become the kind of person who follows through on your word, especially to yourself, your self respect grows, your confidence grows, your influence grows. Discipline isn't punishment. It's not about being harsh, rigid, or robotic. It's about clarity, about alignment, about designing habits that support who you are becoming, not who you used to be. It's not about making life harder. It's about removing chaos. It's about reducing decision fatigue. It's about building rhythm so you can create momentum. The truth is, most people don't lack talent or passion. They lack follow through. They're great at starting, but terrible at finishing. They love getting inspired, but struggle to stay committed. Not because they don't care, but because they've never trained their discipline. They've never designed their environment to support it. They've never replaced the patterns that keep them stuck. You can't expect breakthrough results while maintaining the same behaviors that sabotage your progress. You can't expect new outcomes from old habits. Change demands more than desire. It demands discipline, daily, quietly, repeatedly. Discipline is the master skill that amplifies all others. It makes learning easier because it keeps you consistent. It makes progress faster by reducing internal resistance. It makes performance sustainable because you're not relying on feelings, you're acting from a decision. And that's the challenge. Discipline rarely feels good in the moment. It's often inconvenient, repetitive, unexciting. But over time, it delivers something motivation never can: real, lasting results. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Until one day, the things that once took effort become part of your identity. There are 7 core techniques that sharpen this skill. Not fluff, not vague theory. Real, practical strategies that build discipline that holds under pressure, that doesn't collapse when life gets loud, that functions as a system you can trust, not a fleeting emotion you have to chase. These methods aren't for people looking for shortcuts. They're for people who are ready to stop starting over, for people who are tired of wishing and ready to lead, for people who are done making promises they don't keep. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you said you were. It's about closing the gap between what you want and how you act. It's about replacing emotional decisions with aligned ones. It's about building a life where discipline no longer feels like a burden because it becomes who you are. It starts with integrity. The first technique to enhance self-discipline is to eliminate negotiation. That internal debate, the quiet voice that asks, "Do I really need to do it today?" The logic that says, "It's okay just this once." The reasoning that tells you, "You'll do it tomorrow." That voice must be silenced. Because the moment you start negotiating with discipline, you surrender to your feelings. And feelings are inconsistent, unreliable, and ever-changing. You cannot win long-term if every decision requires a conversation. If every action depends on how you feel in the moment, then your emotions, not your goals, are in control. And that's dangerous. Because moods lie. They fluctuate based on stress, sleep, distraction, fear, other people's opinions, and even the weather. If your behavior is dictated by what's unpredictable, your results will be just as unstable. Discipline begins where negotiation ends. No more internal debates. No more maybe. If it's scheduled, it's done. If it's part of the process, it's non-negotiable. You don't need to feel like doing it. You simply follow through on your decision. The key is pre-decision. Most people try to decide in the moment, but when the moment arrives, they're tired, distracted, emotional. They're unclear. And when clarity fades, negotiation begins. This is why your standards must be set in advance. Your rules, your routines, your commitments, they're already decided. So when the time comes, your mind doesn't burn energy debating. You just do it. Not because it's easy, not because you feel like it, but because it's the standard, the rule, the identity you've chosen. That's how real discipline is built, through alignment, not adrenaline, through principle, not preference, through habits that are embedded in who you are. The top athletes in the world don't train when it's convenient. They train because it's on the schedule. Top leaders don't act only when they're confident. They follow their system. Top creators don't rely on fleeting motivation. They rely on rhythm. That's the difference. Not talent, but structure. Not hype, but repetition. So how do you eliminate negotiation? You build routines. You anchor behavior to time, to triggers, to identity. You don't just say, I want to be more disciplined. You define exactly what that means. What time, what day, what action. Once it's on your calendar, it's as good as done. You simplify. You remove unnecessary options. You stop leaving space for later or maybe. You reduce friction. Because the easier it is to begin, the less room you give your mind to resist. And here's the reward. Every time you override negotiation, your identity shifts. You prove to yourself that your vision matters more than your mood, that your purpose is greater than your feelings, that your standard is no longer up for discussion. Eventually, the voice that used to resist gets quieter. The drag fades, and the habit takes over. This isn't about forcing yourself forever. It's about retraining the internal dialogue from do I have to this is who I am, from how do I feel to what did I commit to. That's real leadership. Because when you eliminate negotiation, you gain momentum. You move faster, with more confidence, with more clarity. You stop stalling and you start executing. Technique number 2, master micro commitments. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a week and underestimate what they can accomplish in a year. But the secret to that kind of long-term discipline, it's hidden in the next decision, the next 5 minutes, the next hour, the next small action. Discipline isn't built through bold declarations. It's built through small, consistent follow-through. That's where micro commitments come in. Micro commitments are specific, time-bound, doable actions that anchor your focus and reinforce your identity. They are the daily proof that you're becoming who you said you would be. Most people don't fail because they aim too low. They fail because they aim too vague. I'll work out. I'll eat healthier. I'll focus more. Those are hopes, not commitments. A real micro commitment sounds like this. I will write for 25 minutes after my first cup of coffee. I will do 50 push-ups before I shower. It's not about willpower. It's about clarity and repetition. Micro commitments build self-respect. Every time you follow through, you're not just completing a task, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. And those votes compound. String enough of them together, and you build a track record. And track records become confidence. Because confidence isn't a feeling, it's a pattern. A pattern of keeping promises to yourself. A pattern of showing up. You don't need grand victories to build discipline. You need consistency. You need rhythm. You need evidence. And when life gets overwhelming, don't try to change everything at once. Don't jump into 30-day overhauls that leave you exhausted by day 5. Start with one micro commitment. Something simple, clear, immediate, a win you can stack today. That's how real change happens, not by doing everything, but by not abandoning the little things that matter. Wake up and ask, what is one thing I will finish today, no matter what? What's the time? The trigger? The first step? Build your day around that. Don't wait to feel ready, just act. The people who look the most disciplined aren't more disciplined. They're just better at structuring their day to support it. They create anchors, not anxiety. Structure, not stress. That's what mastery looks like. Technique number 3, master the art of recovery. Most people think discipline means pushing harder, grinding longer. But real, lasting discipline isn't about the effort you exert. It's about the energy you manage. If you don't know how to recover, you will burn out. Not because you're weak, but because you never learned how to sustain. Discipline requires energy. Focus requires energy. Resilience requires energy. And when you burn through that energy without recharging, your performance suffers. You start procrastinating, not because you're lazy, but because you're drained. Your decision making weakens, your frustration grows, your results stall. This is where recovery becomes a strategy, not a reward, not laziness, not something you earn, but something you prioritize. The disciplined treat recovery like fuel. They rest not to escape the mission, but to strengthen their ability to execute it. Recovery sharpens your edge, it protects your clarity, it allows you to lead from overflow, not exhaustion. So, what does it look like? You build rhythms, not just routines. You don't try to be on 24/7. You understand when to push and when to unplug. You create space to breathe, to process, to reflect. You set boundaries around your time, your energy, your inputs. You protect your mornings. You protect your nights. You protect the gaps in between where your mind needs silence. Clarity doesn't come from chaos, it comes from stillness. So you schedule recovery just like you schedule your work. You build it in. Non negotiable, stillness, movement, nutrition, reflection, sleep, boundaries. You create habits that reset your nervous system. So your actions come from precision, not panic. The more you grow, the more recovery you need. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong. Because responsibility compounds. And if you don't manage it well, it manages you. Recovery isn't passive, it's intentional, it's powerful, and it's part of the system that keeps your discipline alive. Technique number 4, use environment as leverage. Discipline is not just about willpower, it's about environment. Because no matter how strong your mindset is, if you're constantly surrounded by distractions, temptations, and friction, your discipline will erode. Your environment either pulls you forward or holds you back. It either makes the right decision easier or the wrong one automatic. This is why the most disciplined people don't rely solely on internal strength. They design external support. They know that your surroundings shape your behavior more than your intentions do. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, and your environment is part of your system. So, how do you use it as leverage? You remove friction. Make the behaviors you want to build easier to start. Lay your workout clothes out the night before. Turn off notifications. Keep your phone in another room when you're working. Create focus zones in your space, places that cue your brain to engage. You also increase resistance to distraction. Make the wrong choice harder. Delete apps. Use website blockers. Log out of platforms that drain your energy. Don't just try to resist temptation. Make it inconvenient. If you're constantly negotiating with distractions, you're wasting energy that should be used for execution. Environment is also people. Who you spend time with, whose voices you hear daily, matters. Are you surrounded by people who normalize excuses or people who normalize effort? Do your conversations revolve around blame or responsibility, support or sabotage? If you're serious about discipline, you have to audit more than your habits. You have to audit your inputs, the shows you watch, the news you consume, the accounts you follow, the energy you absorb. Because it's not just your actions that shape your future, it's your atmosphere. If your environment isn't aligned with your discipline, it will constantly pull you off course. The disciplined don't leave their surroundings to chance. They curate it with intention. They understand that every object, every voice, every space either supports the future or steals from it. So ask yourself, what needs to be removed? What needs to be added? What needs to be restructured? Because once your environment is aligned, discipline doesn't feel like resistance, it feels like flow. Technique number 5, track and reflect. What you don't track, you can't improve. And what you don't reflect on, you'll keep repeating. Discipline isn't just about doing the thing. It's about understanding what helps you follow through and what gets in your way. Without reflection, you're flying blind. Without tracking, you're guessing. Highly disciplined people treat their habits like data. They track workouts, they track writing sessions, they track daily wins, energy levels, distractions. Not obsessively, but intentionally, because data tells the truth. It removes emotion from evaluation. It shows patterns. It reveals what's working and what's not. Reflection is where you process that data. You ask, what gave me momentum today? Where did I waste time or energy? What triggered distraction or delay? What do I need to adjust? You don't just track for productivity, you track for awareness. Because self-awareness is the foundation of self-leadership. The disciplined aren't perfect. They're imperfect. They're just aware. They know when they're off. They know why they're stuck. They can self-correct because they've been paying attention. Tracking also builds motivation. Why? Because it makes progress visible. It shows you the compound effect of your effort. It turns invisible habits into tangible results. Even a simple habit tracker, checkboxes, journals, a quick end of day note can change how you see yourself. Because every check mark is a reminder I followed through again today. Every log is a vote for discipline. And those votes compound. Without tracking, you lose sight of the process. Without reflection, you miss the lessons. With both, you evolve faster. You become your own coach. You start to lead yourself not from emotion, but from evidence. Technique number 6, create identity anchors. Behavior follows identity. If you want lasting discipline, you must stop acting like someone trying to change and start acting like someone who already has. The most powerful force in human psychology is the desire to remain consistent with who we believe we are. This is why identity anchors matter. Identity anchors are statements, habits, and decisions that reinforce the kind of person you've chosen to become. They remove hesitation because they eliminate identity conflict. When you say, I'm trying to eat healthy, there's still negotiation. But when you say, I'm someone who takes care of their body, the behavior aligns with identity. When you say, I'm trying to write every day, you'll miss days. But when you say, I'm a writer, you write. That's what writers do. Discipline becomes easier when the action is a reflection of who you are, not a battle of who you're trying to be. So, how do you create these anchors? You define your identity clearly, not just what you want, but who you are becoming. You write it, you speak it, you remind yourself daily. You pair behaviors with identity. I go to the gym because I'm an athlete. I stick to my calendar because I'm a professional. I show up early because I'm a leader. These statements anchor action in purpose. They move you from motivation to embodiment. The more you reinforce these identity anchors through small wins, the more automatic your discipline becomes. You're no longer just choosing a behavior, you're affirming who you are. Technique number 7, raise the standard, not the pressure. The final technique is subtle but essential. Raise the standard, but lower the emotional pressure. Discipline breaks down when it becomes perfectionism, when every task becomes a test, when every miss becomes a failure. The most disciplined people don't perform perfectly, but they perform consistently because they understand this truth. High standards do not require self-judgment. They raise the standard of effort, of presence, of consistency, without attaching shame to every off day. They don't say, I failed. They say, I missed. I'll adjust. I'll continue. This mindset keeps discipline sustainable because when pressure builds without compassion, discipline crumbles. So raise the standard, show up earlier, execute cleaner, focus deeper, but do it from purpose, not punishment. When you miss a day, don't start over, resume. Don't let one mistake justify a full collapse. This is about your life, not a perfect streak. Real discipline is flexible. It adapts, it learns, it endures. Because in the long game, the standard is what pulls you forward. Not pressure, not fear, not shame. Final thought. Discipline is not a trait you're born with. It's a system you build, a skill you train, and a mindset you maintain. With structure, with awareness, with rhythm, with recovery, with identity. The world is full of people with potential, but the ones who fulfill it, the ones who build something that lasts, are the ones who lead themselves when no one is watching. That's what these techniques are for, to help you become that person. Not in theory, but in daily action.